Tom Thumb. There was once a poor farmer who sat by the fire in the evening and poked it. His wife sat beside him and spun yarn. He said how sad it was that they had no children, and everything was so quiet. In other houses it was noisy and lively. His wife replied and sighed, even if they had just one child, it would be small and only about the size of a thumb. She would be quite happy, and they would still love it with all their hearts. Then the woman fell ill, and after 7 months gave birth to a baby that was perfect in all its limbs, but no larger than a thumb. They were happy. It was as they wished it to be, and they called it Tom Thumb. They took good care of the child, but it did not grow taller. It stayed the same size. Nevertheless, it looked intelligent in its eyes, and showed itself to be a wise and nimble creature. Everything it did turned out well, and Tom Thumb became a beloved member of the family. One day the peasant was preparing to go into the forest to chop wood. He said to himself, "I wish there was someone who could bring the cart for me." Then he cried out, "Oh, Father, I will soon bring the cart. Rely on that, it will be in the forest at the appointed time." The man smiled and said, "How can that be done? You are far too small to lead the horse." "That's not a problem, Father," replied the peasant. "If my mother will harness the horse, I can sit in its ear and tell it what to do." When the time came, the mother harnessed the horse and placed the peasant in its ear. The little creature then cried, "Gee up, gee up," and it went off properly, as if with its master. The cart followed the right path into the forest. Just as the peasant was turning a corner, 2 strange men approached him. They asked if he needed any help. The peasant replied that he was fine, but thanked them for their offer. My word was one of them. "What is this?" "There's a cart coming, and a driver is calling for a horse, but he is not to be seen." "That can't be right," said the other. "We will follow the cart and see where it stops." The cart drove right into the forest, exactly to the place where the wood had been cut. When Tom Thumb saw his father, he cried out to him, "See, Father, here I am with the cart. Now take me down." The father got hold of the horse with his left hand, and with the right took his little son out. Tom Thumb sat down happily on a straw, but when the 2 strangers saw him, they were amazed. One of them took the other aside and said, "Park the little fellow will make our fortune if we exhibit him in a big town for money. We will buy him." They went to the farmer and said, "Fellows, the little man will be well treated with us." But the father replied, "No, he is the apple of my eye, and all the money in the world could not buy him from me." Tom Thumb, however, when he heard about the bargain, crept up his father's coat and whispered in his ear, "Father, do not give me away. I will come back soon." Then his father parted with him to 2 men for a good amount of money. The men asked him where he wanted to sit, and he said, "Just set me on the rim of your hat, and then I can walk back and forth and look at the countryside, and still not fall down." They did as he asked, and when Tom Thumb took leave of his father, they walked away with him. They walked until dusk, and then the little boy said, "Take me down. I want to get off." The man took his hat off, put the little boy on the ground by the side of the road, and crept around a little between the stones, and then he suddenly slipped into a mouse hole that he had found. "Good evening, gentlemen, just go home." Without me, they cried and mocked him. They ran to the mouse hole, but it was all in vain. Tom Thumb crept farther in, and as it became dark, they had to return home with their frustration and empty purses. When Tom Thumb saw them gone, he crept out of the underground passage. He said it was dangerous to walk in the dark, as a neck or leg could easily be broken. Fortunately, he found an empty snail shell and used it to spend the night safely. Soon after, he heard two men talking about how to steal the rich pastor's silver and gold. One of the thieves said they could tell him what to do. Tom interrupted them and asked what they were saying. The thief was frightened and stopped talking. They stood still, listening, and Tom spoke again, saying what they had been planning. "Take me with you, and I'll help you. But where art thou?" "Just look on the ground and observe whence my voice comes," he replied. There the thieves found him at length and lifted him up. "Little imp, how will you help us?" they said. "A great deal," said he. "I will creep into the pastor's room through the iron bars and reach out to you whatever you want." "Come then," they said, "and we will see what you can do." When they got to the pastor's house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but instantly cried out with all his might, "Do you want to have everything that is here?" The thieves were alarmed and said, "I do speak softly, so as not to awaken anyone." Tom Thumb, however, behaved as if he had not understood this, and cried again, "What do you want? Do you want to have everything that is here?" The cook, who slept in the next room, heard this and sat up in bed, listening. The thieves, however, had, in their fright, run some distance away. But finally they gathered their courage and thought that the little rascal was trying to mock them. They came back and whispered to him, "Be serious and show us something." Tom Thumb cried out as loudly as he could, "I will give you everything. Just put your hands on the maid." She heard this quite clearly and jumped out of bed, rushing to the door. The thieves took off and ran as if the wild huntsmen were chasing after them. But as the maid couldn't see anything, she went to get a light. When she arrived at the place, Tom Thumb was nowhere to be seen, so she searched every corner and found nothing. She lay down in her bed again, believing that she had been dreaming with open eyes and ears. Tom Thumb had climbed into the hay and found a comfortable place to sleep. He intended to stay there until day, then go home to his parents. But he had other plans. There is much affliction and misery in the world. When day dawned, the maid arose to feed the cows. Her first stop was the barn, where she grabbed an armful of hay, and in that very same hay poor Tom Thumb was sleeping. He was sleeping so deeply that he was unaware of anything and did not wake until he was in the mouth of the cow who had picked him up along with the hay. "Oh, heavens!" he cried. "How have I gotten into the mill?" But he soon realized where he was. Then it was necessary for him to be careful not to let himself get caught in the teeth and dismembered, but he was none the less forced to slip down into the stomach along with the hay. "This little room has no windows," he said, "and no sun shines here. Neither will a candle be brought." His quarters were especially unpleasant to him, and the worst part was that more and more hay kept coming in through the door, and the space grew smaller and smaller. Finally, in his anguish, he cried out as loudly as he could, "No more fodder! Bring me no more!" The maid was just finishing milking the cow when she heard someone speak. She saw no one, but she heard the same voice she had heard the night before. She was so terrified that she slipped off her stool and spilled the milk. In great haste, she ran to her master and said, "Heavens, pastor, the cow is speaking." The pastor replied, "You are mad." But he went to the buyer's house to see what was happening. He hardly had set his foot inside the house when Tom Thumb cried again, "Bring me no more fodder, bring me no more fodder." Then the pastor himself was alarmed and thought that an evil spirit had entered the cow. He ordered her to be killed, and she was killed. However, the stomach in which Tom Thumb was thrown onto the midden. Tom Thumb had great difficulty working his way out, but he succeeded in getting some room. Just as he was about to thrust his head out, a new misfortune occurred. A hungry wolf ran up and swallowed the whole stomach in one gulp. Tom Thumb did not lose his courage. Perhaps the wolf thought he would listen to what I have to say, and he called out to him from his stomach, "Dear wolf, I know of a magnificent feast for you. Where is it to be held?" Said the wolf. "In such and such a house," replied the boy. "You must creep in through the kitchen sink, and we will find cakes and bacon and sausages and as much of it as you can eat." The wolf did not need to be told twice. He squeezed himself through the sink at night and ate to his heart's content in the larder. When he had eaten his fill, he wanted to go out again, but he had grown so big that he could not get out by the same way. Tom Thumb had counted on this and began to make loud noises in the wolf's stomach. The wolf said, "Be quiet. You will wake the people up." "What do you care?" replied the little man. "You have eaten your fill, and I will be free." Mary likewise began to scream with all her strength. Her father and mother, awakened by the noise, ran to the room and looked through the opening in the door. When they saw a wolf inside, they ran away. The husband fetched an axe, and the wife a scythe. The man said, "When I give him a blow, if he is not killed by it, you must cut him down and chop his body into pieces." Tom Thumb heard his parents' voices and cried, "Dear father, I'm here. I'm inside the wolf's body." Said the father, full of joy, "Thank God our dear child has found us again." The woman took away her scythe, but Tom Thumb was not hurt by it. After that he raised his arm and struck the wolf with such a blow to his head that the wolf fell down dead. Then they got knives and scissors and cut the wolf's body open and drew the little fellow forth, as the father said. "What sorrow we have gone through for your sake! Yes, father. I have traveled the world a great deal, thank heaven, and now I breathe fresh air again." "Where have you been, then, O father?" "I have been in a mouse's hole, in a cow's stomach, and then in a wolf's. Now I will stay with you, and we will not leave you again. No, not for all the riches in the world," said his parents, and they embraced and kissed their dear Tom Thumb, and they gave him something to eat and drink, and had some new clothes made for him, for his old ones had been spoiled during his journey.